When does long-term care become really real? This is Bill Witt, and for me, it got really real about 10 or 11 days ago. I've been helping people with long-term care planning since we started Senior Resource Center in 2002. We've helped over 2,000 families with Medicaid planning and other government programs to help pay for care. I watched my parents go through extensive long-term care. Mom had a stroke at 82. She was paralyzed but perky and lived in a wheelchair for 14 years. My dad, a year later, came down with Alzheimer's. He made it 9 years. Together, they spent a lot of that time in facility care that was very expensive. But throughout all of that, I was kind of on the periphery. I visited, I helped out with a little bit of long-term care, but it was part-time. 10 days ago, we had a dinner party at our house. And as the party was winding down late at night, my wife went out onto our deck and tripped on the track that the sliding doors operate on. She didn't break anything. We went to the emergency room the next day, but she twisted her knee in a way that she couldn't walk. And so for Saturday and Sunday, we used a chair out of the office as a makeshift wheelchair. On Monday, I went and bought a wheelchair because she couldn't walk. After a week of trying to rest up and get a little bit of exercise, she's now operating with a walker. But for me, long-term care didn't become real until I was the primary caregiver having to deal with a situation. And so today we want to talk about a tough topic that isn't fun to talk about, but it's one that most of us will experience as we get older. Either we or our spouses will need long-term care, probably both of you, and you've got to figure out ways to pay for it so it doesn't destroy your retirement planning. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my business partner, Tara, and she's going to talk about ways to help pay for long-term care.
Thanks, Bill. All right, so today's topics, we're going to talk about what long-term care is, where you can get care and the cost of that care, and then, of course, most importantly, how we're going to pay for this care. So it's going to be kind of a fire hose of information. So obviously this is going to be recorded and it'll be on our website at srctexas.com under webinars, and you're welcome to watch it. It should be posted later this afternoon, and you can go there and re-listen to it or send it to a friend or family member. Well, the greatest problem is that we are getting older, and the financial risk is high for paying for long-term care and retirement. It's not, the stock market that's going to make you broke. It's going to be long-term care. And the biggest thing we need to know is everybody needs to have a plan of how to pay for that long-term care. And it's really important to know what that is to have a safe, secure retirement, because you can save and save and save, and one bad event or one trip to the nursing home that lasts a lifetime is going to drain your money very, very fast. And one of the problems that we have, which is a good problem to have, is that we are living longer. We're living longer, and the reason why we're living longer is we have better medical care, which means that majority of us are going to need long-term care at some point in our lives. And on average, by the time you're 65 years old, you have a 70% chance of needing some sort of long-term care. Now, the amount of time on average done by studies that women will need long-term care is 3.7 years and men 2.2 years. Okay, and what is long-term care? Well, it is when you need help either physically or cognitively. So physical impairment, which means you'll need hands-on assistance with things like eating, bathing, dressing, using the bathroom, moving about, transference, or incontinence. So a lot of times if you're looking into long-term care insurance, it'll say you have to trigger 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. Well, this is what they're talking about: eating, dressing, bathing, transference, toileting, and incontinence. Once you trigger those, then you can trigger your insurance or other benefits. And then there's cognitive impairment. And that's someone who has been diagnosed with some sort of dementia, cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, Lewy bodies. something where they need 24-hour supervision, medicine management, and need to live in a protected environment because, say, they're a wander risk, or, you know, if they were left to their own devices, would not be able to support themselves. And it can be a combination of both. I mean, we've seen people that are cognitively not, you know, have mild, moderate, severe cognitive impairment, but they can, you know, get about and do things, and then vice versa. So it's either one or the other or both. Okay, so one of the things I will say after speaking to people around the country, it is great to live. Another reason to live in Texas is a good thing about Texas is that we actually have affordable long-term care. And what I mean by that is you see the number where it says home care can be up to $16,000 per month. Well, if you were to go get skilled nursing or assisted living care in New York, Pennsylvania, up in the East Coast or even the West Coast, you're talking about $16,000 a month just for a facility. So we actually are of an affordable place to get care, and a lot of families actually bring their family member here to Texas to do long-term care because of that fact. So home care can be very expensive. Everybody wants to live at home. Of course, you know, you want to be cared for at your own home. The problem is if you take $40 an hour and multiply it by 24 hours and multiply it by 7 days a week, 30 days a month, you're talking about $16,000 a month to pay for long-term care at home if you need 24-hour care. Independent living, that's where you live in kind of like an apartment style living. You know, you're active and do your own things, but maybe there's care available if it's needed. Usually you have, you know, your food taken care of, amenities, that sort of thing. Assisted living is going to be your next level, and that's where you might live in a little one-bedroom apartment or a studio, but now you're needing activities of daily living. Maybe someone needs to come in and help you get dressed every day, or maybe someone needs to come in and help you with bathing. You still have meals provided, activities. This is another place you'll hear a lot about memory care. So if you're driving down the road and you see a facility like Pecan Ridge Memory Care, that is an assisted living facility that has memory care. You know, they're specific to people who have cognitive impairment. Then the highest level is going to be your skilled nursing, and that's when you need the highest level of care, 24-hour supervision. You've got ailments that an assisted living facility no longer can manage. Sometimes what will happen is with our clients is they'll go in for, you know, they'll have a fall or an injury or a situation that happens that lands them in the hospital. And then they'll go to a rehab facility for a specified amount of time. And then the family will talk to the facility and they'll say, you know, they can't go home. They have to be in a skilled nursing facility. They need 24-hour care. And that's where you'll find skilled nursing facilities. And there was an AARP survey done a few years ago that said, like we've said before, the number one reason seniors go broke in retirement is paying for long-term care. So let's talk about some ways to pay for long-term care. The first one, of course, is use your own money. So private pay. If that's something that you have the ability to do or you want to plan for, then some of the ways you can do that is maximize your Social Security benefits. Make sure you're taking advantage of every rule that's out there to maximize your Social Security. Create your own income. You know, generate dividends off CDs, bonds, stocks. Maybe you have some real estate. You can use the rental property income to pay for your care. And then, of course, annuities are great because they help with creating a lifetime income that you can't outlive. And then home equity. You could downsize your house. A lot of people are cash poor and house rich, and so they could sell their home to pay for long-term care. Or maybe they get a reverse mortgage, which can be a little tricky if you have to go in a facility, but say you're getting care at home, you can do a reverse mortgage. The next one we talk about is we call it short-term long-term care, and that's Medicare. Now, Medicare is traditionally health insurance for people over the age of 65. But when it comes to long-term care, it does help a little bit. So let's say I have a fall, I go to the hospital for 3 nights, I trigger my Medicare benefits. Now, Medicare is going to pay for days 1 to days 20. Now, if I go from the hospital to a rehab place, those days are going to continue. So my hospital days will start, and then they'll continue at the rehab days. At the last day, either on regular Medicare, which then my benefit would end and I would have to private pay for whatever remaining days or be discharged. Or if I have an Advantage plan, I might have a copay, and it could be anywhere from $50 a day to $280 a day copay. Or if I have a Medicare supplement plan, the supplement plans will pay 100% from days 21 to day 100, and the max you can get is 100 days. So you have to make progress in your rehab. So if your mom is there for rehab and she's refusing it, they'll say, sorry, we're going to have to end it. The Medicare days are ending. Or they say she's plateaued. We've gotten her knee as strong as we can get it, and we're going to discharge her. And then that would be the end of the plan. You can do in-home rehab. So you could go home and have Medicare pay for some rehab. But we have learned that that in-home rehab care places will only cover 10 visits. And the reason why is because after 10 visits, they start losing money. And so they will discharge you after 10 visits, whether that's a nurse coming in or an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, or a physical therapist. You get 10 visits total. So sometimes you want to have rehab at home, but sometimes financially it's not going to work to the best of your ability. Okay, the next one is VA in attendance. Now, I know this doesn't apply to everybody, but if you have a family member or you are a person who served during a wartime period, there is a benefit for the veteran and their spouse. So this is a non-service connected disability pension. It was created by Congress in 1952, and they were told not to advertise it. So a lot of people didn't know about it until probably the last 15 years when people have started talking about it more. I think with the baby boomers, especially getting older. And the nice thing is it's a pension. So it pays wherever you need care or you're getting care. So whether that's at home, you're going to an adult daycare, assisted, skilled, wherever, it's a fixed amount. So you have to have served 90 consecutive days and of a wartime period of active duty with one of those days during these windows. So you can see World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Gulf War. Only one day within this window will get you eligible as long as you have 90 consecutive days of active duty. And so here's the criteria. We have military service, which I just talked about, honorable discharge, 90 consecutive days, and only one day during the conflict. But then you have to have medical necessity. We've had people who have applied for this benefit and unfortunately didn't get it. And I asked them, well, who was caring for you? Well, no one. Well, how were you? So you weren't paying for care? No. Well, that's why you got denied, because you have to meet medical necessity. So the medical necessity is kind of like we talked about for what is long-term care. So you have to have cognitive or physical impairment. So you have to need hands-on assistance with 2 of the 5 activities daily living. Eating, and that's not prepping meals, that's actually putting a fork to your mouth. Dressing, bathing, toileting, and transference, or if you have cognitive impairment and need 24-hour supervision. So if you meet one or both of those, then that's going to be number 2 of the criteria you have to meet. The next thing is income and assets. So because this benefit was designed to help people who need help, they want to make sure that you meet the financial criteria. So the first thing is income. You have to be spending equal to or more than your income on care alone. And what that means is if I bring home $2,000 in Social Security, but I'm only paying $500 a month for someone to come in and help me, then I'm not going to make the benefit. But if I I make $2,000 a month in Social Security and I move into a facility and it costs me $4,000, then yes, I definitely am spending more than my income. And people will say, well, what about paying the bills? Well, that's where you're going to have to dip into your savings to pay the bills, to offset, because they only count your care expense. So that's paying for care providers, the facility cost, any medical premiums like your Medicare Part B premium or your supplement plan, and then any IADL care. And what that means is, like, if you hired someone to come in and make meals or run your errands or clean your house, or some kind of in-home care service. So those are the ones they count. It can get a little tricky with couples because couples tend to make more money. And if only one person needs care and they're getting care at home, they have to get a lot of care in order to make that work. The next piece is assets. So today, or this year, the countable assets cannot exceed $159,240. So if you make more than that, or I'm sorry, you own more than that, then you would not be eligible. Now, they do exempt your house. If it's on more than 3 acres and they start counting the acres, second properties, timeshares, all that would count. Your burial program is exempt and 1 car is exempt. So you have to make sure that you don't have assets greater than that. Now, let's say, you've got 175,000. Well, come see us and we can talk about creative ways to spend down that money. Maybe you have a mortgage. Maybe you need a new roof. Maybe, you've been putting off getting a new water heater. I mean, there's ways that you could wisely spend that money to get you below 159, and then we would apply. Okay, so what do you get? Well, the numbers are pretty good. And this is really the benefit of this, is that you would start getting this monthly amount, and that could help offset bills or additional care you might need in the future, or now moving from home to an assisted living facility. So a married vet's $2,795, a single veteran $2,358, veteran spouse, meaning the veteran's healthy but the spouse needs the care, and then a surviving spouse is $1,515, and it's a fixed amount, and these are the maxes. So if you're a little off, you can get less, but you're not going to get any more than this. And it does go up with COLA, so it increases every year, and you'll continue to get the increase. Now, how do you apply? Well, I will tell you, it's not a do-it-yourself thing. There's at least 25 plus pages of the application. You have to prove all of your income and assets. And when you send everything in, you do it either via mail or fax. And the only thing you do to check on it is to call, and they'll just give you the status. Like, we're in the discovery phase, or we're in the completion phase, or we're in the whatever phase. But they're not going to tell you, oh yeah, we noticed that you forgot to fill out this one, section of the forms. What they'll do is they'll send you a letter, explain what's wrong, and then you have to fix it, and it slows everything down. So the goal is to get in what they call a fully developed claim that allows you for it to go through. Now, it takes about 6 months, so it is a long time. However, from the day you apply, they will back pay in a lump sum the months while you were waiting that you should have been receiving that benefit. So a lot of times families will tell me, Tara, I just got this huge lump sum from the VA in my checking account, and I haven't even gotten a letter saying we were approved. And that usually happens. You'll get the money before you'll get the approval letter, which is kind of nice. And then from there on, then they start paying you monthly. So that's VA in attendance. If you don't qualify for it, please, if you ever hear anybody who's a veteran or a spouse of a veteran, let them know that it exists and have them give us a call. Okay, and then the last of the federal and state programs is Medicaid. And Medicaid is what we like to call the great safety net, because all people have been paying into this, whether since you've been working. And so, take advantage of it. And our job at Senior Resource Center is to help people protect and preserve their assets and qualify for Medicaid in a skilled nursing facility. Now, you can only be in a skilled nursing facility. So people will come to us and say, hey, my mom needs memory care. Well, if they go to assisted or in a memory care facility, they cannot qualify for Medicaid, because Medicaid does not pay in those facilities. They only pay in skilled nursing. So in order to be eligible for the benefit, you have to be in a Medicaid bed, and just means that Medicaid is a payer, and there's a certain number of beds that they allow to be paid by Medicaid in the facility. So the best thing to do if you think you could qualify for Medicaid is call the facility and say, hey, I'm wondering if you have any Medicaid beds available. And if they have 30 and you're the 31st person, you'll be put on a waiting list. So the medical necessity for Medicaid is similar but different to VA. You need to have help with 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. However, it's gotten more strict than that. It needs to be where you need to have care that has to be provided by a licensed professional, or you have to be on certain medications, or you have to have cognitive impairment, and you have to have a certain score. So it is a little trickier. So we always tell people when you're visiting facilities, they need to send the clinicals and ask them if they are they meet medical necessity for Medicaid specifically. Because I've had a quadriplegic family member in a nursing home and they could not get on Medicaid because they did not meet medical necessity. So you really need to make sure that you're very clear. Hey, do you have a Medicaid bed available? And does my mom or dad meet medical necessity? That's really important. And then next is going to be the income and asset criteria. Okay. First is, a lot of people think you have to be broke to be on Medicaid, and that's not true. You can protect everything you have as a single person. As a couple, you can protect all of your assets, but you have to know how to do it right, and that's what we are experts in. For a single person, you can protect your house, a car, a burial program, and about 50 or more % of your assets. A lot of people say, well, I've heard that, mom's income's too high. And yes, that's true. They do have an income limit. However, there's something it's an extra step you have to take to set up what's called a qualified income trust, or some people called it a Miller trust, to receive benefits. And all that is a special checking account that's controlled by the rules of the trust, that you have to put money in and take money out according to the rules of the trust, so that the state knows you're spending that money on the nursing home and the allowable things. So it's just kind of like a money laundering account in a way. It starts at 0, put money in, take money out, ends at 0. And so it's just one extra step you have to do. So your income will never be too high. The other one is my quality of care is poor. No, the laws protect against facility discrimination. You'll never see that there's a Medicaid wing or a Medicare wing or a private pay wing. Nobody knows how the residents are being paid, paying for their care. So all care is the same. People also say I can give away all of my assets. That also is not true. You can if you do it correctly, but yes, the answer is if you give anything away above $200, the state wants to know why, and they can penalize you for it. So I know that everybody wants to be really generous when they get older and give their kids their, max, tax deduction, $16,000 to you and you and you. But if you had one bad fall, stroke, whatever, and you needed to get on Medicaid, we would hope those kids would be able to give that money back, because that money would create a penalty that would cause you not to be able to get on Medicaid. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do gifting, because we can use it to our advantage, but also most people think, oh, I'll just give everything away and then I can get on Medicaid because I have less than $2,000. And that's not true. And the last thing is I'll lose my home. And again, that is false. We can protect it with what you call a special warranty deed or a ladybird deed, and that protects your house. And it says that, you still own your home, but at the moment of your death, it goes to your beneficiaries. And so when Medicaid estate recovery comes back and asks, what did you have at the moment of your death? The answer would be nothing, because the special warranty deed said, at the moment of my death, my house goes to my son or daughter or whoever. Okay. And just to kind of go back to asset criteria, you have to have less than $2,000 at the first of every month in order to qualify for Medicaid. So our job at Senior Resource Center is to help you find ways to get your assets below that number, but in a way that protects and preserves as much of your assets as you have. So you have to be less than 2,000 at the first of every month. Couples can protect in a different way. There's different rules with couples. Come see us. We can talk about that and how couples can get one spouse on Medicaid and protect all of their assets. So this is definitely something you want to hire someone to do this Medicaid application. We become the authorized representative for the family, which basically allows us to speak to the facility and to the state and to the family to make sure we're getting it all done and done correctly. There's a lot of forms. They want proof of income and assets. They don't ask for a 5-year look back, but if they see something, they can ask as far back as 5 years. And the Health and Human Services usually only communicates through mail. Occasionally they will call. And right now the cases are getting approved about 60 days out. So it does take a while. But again, a lot of the nursing homes aren't even allowing people to come in Medicaid pending if they haven't hired someone to manage the case, because they're on the line for the money and they want to protect themselves. So it's real important to hire someone like us to make sure you're managing your Medicaid. Okay, and if you have other questions about Medicaid or VA, please feel free to give us a call. We've been doing this for 22 years and we're really good at our jobs. Okay, so the other ways that you can pay for long-term care is through insurance products. The first one is long-term care insurance. And, we say it's really suited for young, healthy individuals because you buy it with your health, because they do a very strong underwriting about your health, and you can get, bumped off for things that you would be surprised that you wouldn't be eligible for the long-term care benefit. There are less and less companies that they're offering long-term care, so it is kind of harder to get these days, and it's more expensive. In order to qualify, like we said before, you have to trigger 2 of the 5 activities of daily living or have cognitive impairment, and it will pay wherever you need care. So most long-term care insurances are robust, where it'll say, and you want to be specific when you get one, that it'll pay in-home, assisted, skilled, or wherever you're getting care. The way it works is you're buying a bucket of money. So if I have, a certain amount of, a daily rate or a monthly term of coverage, let's say they're paying out $4,000 a month for 3 years, then I'm buying a bucket of $144,000. And that's how much I'm paying, how much I'm purchasing. There is elimination periods. So they'll say, and these are things you can turn on and off and make wider or smaller. And that will create the difference in the cost you're going to pay monthly for the premium. So let's say a 90-day elimination is always a good one, because if you went to the hospital, you are going to be on Medicare days. So you could start and have Medicare paying during that elimination period. We always recommend inflation protection. So you take that $144,000 and it increases over time versus being a fixed amount, because $4,000 today, 10 years from now, might pay for half of your care, where it would pay for all of your care today. So you want it to increase with inflation. And then they have other riders and features depending on the insurance product. They have shared policies and individual policies. We strongly recommend shared policies for couples, because one person can tap it the other person can tap it, both people can tap it at the same time. If one person dies, the other person's money, rolls over to the living person to use it, and it just disappear. You want to make sure you pick a reputable long-term care policy company. And Texas does have a partnership plan that allows you to double the value of your long-term care policy, because whatever you spent on your policy, once it's exhausted, that amount you're allowed to protect of your assets and qualify for Medicaid. So it's like a little deal they have with the state. So it's a really good plan. And most states now have this partnership plan with long-term care insurance. Okay, another option is they have these asset multiplying products. So say you put $100,000 in, and it's you can do a one-time pay or a 10 years pay, and then the pay would double to $250,000 in long-term care benefits. All of the withdrawals are tax-free, and they spend your money first. So they'll spend your first the 100,000 you put in first, and then they'll start tapping into their money next. But the nice thing is if you never use it, unlike traditional long-term care insurance, you're giving your money to the long-term care insurance company. You die, you don't get your premiums back. With this one, if you put 100,000 in and say had a car accident, your heirs would get that 100,000 back. And the other nice thing about this one is it has lighter underwriting. So they're not as strict as long-term care insurance. So say maybe you weren't eligible for long-term care insurance, you could try getting something like this and see if you would make it through underwriting. There are life insurance products that you can draw against your death benefit. And so again, these withdrawals are tax-free, and whatever's left goes to your heirs. And then of course there's normal, life insurance underwriting for that one. And then finally, there is annuities. So people would put money into an annuity to say generate income for a lifetime to support their lifestyle, but they'll have an extra rider that will double the payout for a specific amount of time, let's say 3 years or 5 years, and that will offset the long-term care. So you have to trigger it just like anything else with ADL requirements, but you'll be able to double that payout for a period of time to help offset the cost of care. All right, I know I've said a lot. I know this has been a fire hose, but you're always welcome to come back, listen to it again, call us for your specific questions. Our consultations are always free, so we're happy to talk to you at any time, so please give us a call. We also do other things, not just long-term care planning. We also do comprehensive retirement planning, and that means, we take a look at your total portfolio and say, okay, how can we make sure you don't outlive your money? And we have really great software to look out 20, 30 years to make sure you're maximizing what you have, to make sure you're not going to outlive your money. We do tax planning, not tax prep. And what we mean is we just find ways to help pay less tax during retirement. And then the last thing we do is we do estate planning. We're not attorneys, but we just, sit down with our families and say, hey, do you have a power of attorney? Do you have beneficiary designations on all your assets? Like, let's make sure we can even avoid probate if possible. So if you have questions on any of those things, I know also we help with Social Security planning, and we help with Medicare. So if you need to sign up for Medicare this year, or you want to talk about, the changes, we are going to be talking about that next week. So make sure you stay tuned. Next week, we're going to be talking about Medicare changes, what Part D is going to look like next year. So be sure to tune in for that. So that's it. That wraps up our talk today. I will get out the recording this afternoon and email it to everyone. So you're welcome to share it with others. And we're glad that you were with us. Have a wonderful day.
Tara, are you taking